Well, hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're in the fairly new Shrike Simulations F-86 Sabre. We're here on the ground in Trenton, Ontario. We're gonna do a short flight over to Toronto just to kind of showcase this amazing airplane. I don't normally do jets. I'm more of a radial piston-powered type of person, but the F-86 is such an iconic airplane that I couldn't resist taking it out for a spin and showing y'all what it could do. So without further ado, let's go ahead and climb aboard and get this Sabre fired up. So here we are inside our F-86 Sabre. As you'll notice at the beginning there, we had the Golden Hawks livery, and that's kind of the reason I chose Trenton, Ontario to start, because currently there is an X Golden Hawks Sabre housed there at Trenton. So somewhere around here is a one in real life. So we'll just assume we're taking it out for a little joyride. So to get this thing started is pretty straightforward. You got your external power here. See our gauges come alive as our external power comes on. There's a little ground power unit. And then we're going to select our engine master. And you'll engage this starter, and I'm just going to walk you through the startup procedure, and then I'm just going to do it and let you listen to the start sounds, because I think they are fantastic. So what we're going to do is we're going to engage the starter, pushing down on this switch here is your starter switch. We know our RPMs, which is this small gauge needle right here. Once that hits about 3%, we're going to come over to our throttle, and you can do this one of two ways. You can either right click on it, right here, or left click on it here, and it'll kick it over. And then when it hits 6%, you'll ease it up into the idle position like so. And it should light off, and you'll be watching your exhaust temps. They'll climb up to about 800, and then should stabilize around 700 idling. So I'm actually have my throttle on my Honeycomb Bravo. You can actually just do that whole sequence with the Honeycomb Bravo as well, so you don't have to click on it. But I'll go ahead and do that and just let you listen to the startup sounds. Here we go. So there's a good start. It's like waking up some kind of beast, I think. Just a phenomenal start sound. So once we got it started, we'll go ahead and select battery, turn off our GPU. See, it disappears out there once we hit that. And we'll go outside. I'll show you this here. You see our heat blower back here. And our exhaust, if you swing around the back. The only effect I think might be slightly overdone is the exhaust cloud while you're sitting on the ground. Once you're in flight, though, it looks pretty well done. But on the ground, I think it's a little bit too much. Other than that, though, just fantastic start sounds, as I said. Okay, so we see this yellow light up here. That's our hydraulics. So we're going to come down here and select the main system there, and that'll turn that off. That is illuminated when the alternate system is going, according to the manual. Alright, I think we are ready to go. So we'll go ahead and taxi out to the runway and do a takeoff with this thing. We'll take our brakes off. Ease up on the throttle. I find that you gotta get it over 60 on your power gauge over here, and then you gotta keep it at 60 to stay moving on the ground. So we're moving now. The nose wheel steering is on by default. I believe you can manipulate if you have an external program such as FS-UIPC, I think it's called, or X's and O's. You can manipulate the LVARs and select nose wheel steering off or on, but it's defaulted to on, which is quite convenient, I think. While we're taxiing out, I'll show you a couple other cool features that Shrike Simulations has added in. If you click here on your emergency escape instructions, you can swap that gun sight out for GPS and transponder down here. I like having the old school look to it, looking like it's a actually active F-86. And Shrike Simulations is a division of Blackbird or Milviz, and they're more aimed at people who want to just enjoy the aircraft. So it's not quite study level, but in my opinion it's close enough. There's so many of the systems are simulated, or simulated enough to be believable, and you can really have a good time with this aircraft. And as far as the customer experience, I bought this directly from Shrike Simulations website. It is now out in the marketplace, so you can buy it there too if you so desire. But I bought it from Shrike because there's some other features that came with it if you bought it direct from Shrike, such as being able to put the loadouts on, such as rockets, bombs, and the weapons effects. So I didn't want to buy it from the marketplace and miss out on those. But I had some issues buying it from the site. I had their e-commerce had some issues, but I reached out to them at their support email, and within a few hours the problem was solved and I was able to go back and fix it. So fantastic customer service. Can't recommend them enough, and it's really just a great airplane. I've flown it a couple times so far, and it's just an absolute blast, as you'll see here in just a moment. So we're heading out to this is runway 24, I believe, here at Trenton. Got decent weather today, got some clouds. Wind's not too terrible either. A couple knots of wind. And we're gonna go down the coast of Lake Erie down to Toronto and put this old girl through its paces. I'm not used to having an airplane that doesn't require a run-up, so it's been a little bit different for me to get used to flying a jet, but I've enjoyed doing it. It's a lot of fun. Go ahead and get our landing light turned on. Set our flaps as well. There's no flap indication inside the aircraft, so that's a little bit odd. I found that I had to go outside to check it out, but now that I'm used to it a little bit, I've got it bound to a propeller axis on my Bravo, Honeycomb Bravo and that's what the manual recommended to do, to bound it to that axis. And I also bound my speed brakes to another axis as well. So the F-86 is a classic jet. It came out in 1947, was its first flight, and I believe they stopped making it in 56. So through the early to mid 50s, and then by the late 50s, it was pretty much obsolete. Other faster, better things were coming out. But every pilot that flies this airplane says that they absolutely love it. It handles nice. It does exactly what you expect it to do. Ease on up to the runway here. Now, these engines do take a minute to spool up. These are General Electric J79s, I believe. Ourselves lined up on the center line here. Oh, they're J47s, excuse me. General Electric J47s in this airplane. Alright, so we're lined up on runway 24. Let's go ahead and go to 100% power. Unleash that 5,910 pounds of force, pounds of thrust there. Airspeed's alive there, cut up on 100. Start easing back on the stick. And we are off. Here, come up, tap brakes. And we'll go ahead and pull flaps up just a little. A little bit more. And all the way up. One thing you gotta watch on the Sabre is you want to be careful not to over-rotate on takeoff. There's actually a couple accidents that happened because of that, so you got to be careful not to over-rotate on takeoff. And I think that's true with just about any jet. Don't want to do that. So again, like I said, the Sabre came out in 47, developed by North American, who also developed, of course, the P-51 Mustang. And initially, when they were developing the F-86, they were a straight-wing airplane. And then after the end of World War II, they had some data from German aircraft designers, and the F-86 was really the first one to benefit from that information. And because of that information, they added the 35-degree swept wing, which we have here. And on the initial models, they had slats on the front leading edge of the wing that would extend on landing to help with handling at low speeds. This model does not have that, instead it has that fence there that you can see, which helps keep airflow over the wing at low speeds. I'm trying to trim myself down here a little bit. It likes to climb pretty quick. Notice the trim is really slow to react on this airplane. I'm going to try to level out at about, I will go to 10,000. There we go, climbing at 2,000 feet a minute, 350 knots. Let me get back the power off just a little bit. Once we get to 10,000 level off, we can do some rolls and stuff. We'll show you what this thing can do. So technically speaking, since we're in a Golden Hawks livery, we would be in a Canada Air Sabre, which the Mark, I believe it's the Mark II and the Mark IV, there wasn't much of a difference between the Canadian-built versions and the American versions. However, with the Mark 5 and 6 Sabres, there was a huge difference. They added a different engine, which had, I believe, 7,500 pounds of thrust, compared to the 5,910 we have here in this model. Coming up on 10,000 there. It just flies awesome. See, we're already cruising around at 400 knots. Just nice and easy. Let's go ahead and do some turns here. I'll show you what we can do and judge my ability to fly a jet here. We got our G meter up there in the top left corner of the instrument panel. Pulling about 3.5 G's in that turn right there. Do a little roll here. And that was just barely pushing the stick over. If I push the stick all the way over, we get this. There we go. Nice roll rate. I might as well roll into a loop just for fun. You gotta be careful not to pull too hard in this airplane, you'll get a shudder. Coming back to the top. Building that speed back up. Putting our pilot through the paces there. Just an absolute blast to fly this thing. I haven't done a lot of negative G's in this airplane, but it can handle them. It's just all around an absolute blast to fly this thing. It's stable, it's fast, so much fun. And I didn't think I would enjoy flying a jet, because jets aren't really my thing. So going back to the Golden Hawks, the specific Canada-built Sabres. The Golden Hawks came about in 1959. The Royal Canadian Air Force decided that they wanted a demonstration team to celebrate the 35th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Air Force and the golden or 50th anniversary of flight in Canada, which was done in 1909. So they put this team together. The original idea was to only fly it for a year, but they ended up flying until 1964, and they were, I believe, a 7-man team. Initially they were 6, but then I think they ended up being a 7-plane team. And they did a lot of formation, close formation flying, low-level formation flying, and they were like the predecessor to the snowbirds that Canada has now. And they invented a lot of different maneuvers. For example, the coordinated two aircraft 360, where 2 aircraft would fly in opposite directions in a circle at low level, about 350 miles an hour, and pass each other on both sides of the circle. That's just one example of a maneuver that they've done. I'm gonna roll just for fun. This is just such a blast to fly. Even just flying straight and level, it just feels fun. And I love the textures they've done in this cockpit. It has that well-worn utilitarian look to it. You got, you know, some scuffs and some faded paint. Just looks great, in my personal opinion. So since we're getting close to Toronto here, I'm going to go ahead and go down a little bit. I'm going to pull the power back. If you get below 78, I believe it is, you'll get a horn, which I believe is for the gear. Hear that going off there. So we'll ease back up to shut that up. I think there's a silence button, but I have not found it yet. So we'll just leave it like that. So we're coming down. We can put a speed brake out to keep speed down. See how much it slowed down there. So on this aircraft, since it takes so long to spool up the engine, when you come into landing, you want to leave the power in. I've been leaving it at about 90 and using my speed brakes to keep the speed down. Otherwise, if you get to a situation where you need to go around, you gotta wait for 2 business days for the engine to spool up. And that actually caused a lot of crashes for people transitioning from a piston-powered aircraft where you have power immediately as soon as you hit the throttle to these jets where you had to wait for the engine to spool up. And that caused a lot of crashes on short final. People not prepared for that. So of course, they trained and they figured out ways around that. And the way around that is to leave the power in and use your speed brakes. Especially on this particular aircraft. And what's something I found interesting on the airfoil design of this airplane, initially they had one airfoil on it. Let me see if I can find which one it was. Basically, they changed airfoils after they gained some combat experience in Korea with these airplanes. I thought that was just interesting that they did that design change. So initially it had the NACA 0009.5-64 at the root and a 0008.5-64 at the tip. And then later they changed it to a 0009-64 and 0008.1-64 at the tip. So they changed the airfoil shape because of the experience they gained in Korea. They also added a fixed leading edge with a 6-inch extended cord at the root and a 3-inch extended cord at the tip later on. They call it the 6-3 wing. So here's Toronto coming up. Great city if you've never been. And we're cruising pretty low here. We'll do a flyby, a low pass. Moving down through about 2,000 feet. Go ahead and come up on our power. Get a good view of the tower there, CN Tower, I believe it's called. cruising by at about 400 knots. There's the airfield. Mission above the tower. And we'll pull it into a loop for fun. Lose speed at the top. Coming back around the bottom. Oh yeah. It's way too much fun. It's way too much fun. Alright, we better get slowed down and land this thing. Otherwise I'm gonna be here all day. I'll back my power off here to about 90. And speed brakes can come out. Get her slowed down here. We'll land on 2.6 because I think the wind is 270 up right now. Try to get some trim going. As I mentioned, it takes forever to react to trim. Now this model of Sabre should have the all-flying tail, which is very similar to what Piper and Beechcraft do with their stabilators, where the whole horizontal stabilizer moves instead of just having elevator flaps. We're slowing down nicely here, coming up on 1,700 feet, excuse me. I was gonna go to 1,500. That was my goal. What I meant to say. We'll extend out quite a ways here to get some speed and split off. Get back the power off just a little bit more. Stay in that green band though. Put in just a little bit of flaps here. Go ahead and turn. And gear can come down. Looking about right for our speed. It's going to be about 175. We'll touch down to about 120. Just going to go ahead and carry that turn all the way around. Put in just a little bit more flaps. Hard to see the runway from all the way out here. Gears down, our set power is spooled up. Speed brakes are out. Cruising off speed pretty good here. It's around the other side of the city here. That's right. Going so fast I wasn't paying attention. Flaps. There it is right there. Full flaps. We're gonna go around, try that again. Maybe this time it'll be better. Did not do a very good pattern on that time. Brake coming out. I'm still getting used to landing this jet. I've only landed it a couple times. Back down. This should be better. Let's not go down at 2,000 feet a minute though. There we go. Gears down. Flaps are full. This will probably be better. We'll go idle once landing is assured. Which is not really, but it's close enough. And there's flare. Oh. There we go. A little bit of bounce. Brake come in. Flaps come up. Well, minus a little bounce there, not too bad. That was a Navy landing instead of an Air Force landing. This is not a Navy airplane, that's why I bounced. So here we are on the ground in Toronto. Not a bad little flight, short, sweet. And just a fun little airplane. We'll go ahead and go over to the ramp and we'll talk a little bit more about this airplane once we're there. Here we are at a hangar. We'll go ahead and shut down. Shutdown's pretty straightforward. Hold throttle back to idle. And then you both left click and right click. And that'll shut off the fuel. And you see it's spool down there. And then kick that back over like that. Take the engine master off. Battery can come off. And that's it. Pretty simple, straightforward shutdown. So I hope you enjoyed our little joyride here in the F-86 Sabre. I know I certainly enjoyed it. It's a very fun airplane to fly. It checks all the boxes for me personally. You've got enough switches and systems depth to be enjoyable. You've got a great model. The textures are great. And it just feels right. The flight model, I've never flown a Sabre, of course, but the flight model just feels right. And everything I've seen from Sabre pilots, they thoroughly enjoy flying the Sabre. It's just a nice flying airplane. And this particular model from Shrike Simulations is a nice flying airplane. It's very enjoyable. So, for me personally, my personal opinion, for $20, you cannot go wrong with this. And now whether you buy it from Shrike directly or from Marketplace, that's your choice. But you can get it both places, and I believe it's $20 in both places. So that's all for today. That's our short little flight in the Shrike Simulations F-86 Sabre. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, consider letting me know in the comments. Give it a like, perhaps subscribing if you can. I enjoy doing these videos. I just have fun flying different airplanes and trying to share a little bit of the history and trying to fly them mostly correctly. I'm just your average pilot, so I can't do it all perfectly every time, but I try. So if you enjoy that kind of stuff, consider following along, and I'll keep doing what I'm doing. I hope you all are having a good day wherever you are. With that, we'll see you next time.